It is already day 4 of the Tell It Slant Poetry Festival 2023, and we have arrived at a very special evening. My name is Anna Plummer. I am program coordinator at the Emily Dickinson Museum, and welcome to the September edition of the Phosphorescence Poetry Series. Dickinson used the term phosphorescence to describe a divine spark, the illuminating light of creative expression. And the museum launched this series to celebrate the power of poetry to spark the imagination and ignite transformation. We are thrilled to produce another series running this year, May through October, bringing you established and emerging poets from all over the world. Before we introduce tonight's guest host and wonderful poet lineup, I have 2 pieces of information for you, our audience. We encourage you to use the chat feature in Zoom to share affirmations and words of encouragement for our poets tonight. These comments form a kind of record for our time together, and we love to share this with our poets after the program. Tonight's readings will also be followed by a Q&A, and we will be looking for your questions in the Q&A feature so that you can pose them to tonight's poets. You can find this at the bottom of your Zoom toolbar, and you may place questions there at any time during tonight's program, so please do. And now I am delighted to introduce you to Kay Lim, who is editorial assistant at The Common, Amherst College's fabulous literary magazine. Kay contributed valuable collections research and work while interning at the museum in 2022 and continues to work here at the museum during the spare time I don't know how they find as a student at Amherst College and editor of the Amherst student newspaper. All of the poets featured tonight are contributors to The Common. And the Emily Dickinson Museum has enjoyed partnering with The Common for Phosphorescence and other programs for many years now. So we are grateful for their friendship and the remarkable voices in poetry that they consistently bring to our doorstep. Thank you so much for joining and hosting tonight's reading, Kay. So I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Anna, for that wonderful introduction, and thank you to everyone else at the Dickinson Museum who has made it possible for these wonderful poets to come together today to share their work. As Anna mentioned, today's featured poets are all contributors to The Common, which is a professional literary magazine based at Amherst College that publishes writing with a strong sense of place. We publish work from all around the world and aim to give voice to international, emerging, and underrepresented writers. We publish fiction, essays, and poetry in print twice a year and online year-round. And we also have a podcast, have classroom resources for teachers, and host master classes and other writing and educational programs. I'm just so excited for The Common and our poets to be a part of this year's Tell It Slant Poetry Festival. When I read Dickinson's work, I often think about it in relation to her identity as a wealthy, white, and very possibly queer woman of her time. In much of her work, such as The Soul Selects Her Own Society, and of course, I'm Nobody, Who Are You?, she explores selfhood and the conditions of a person imposed simply by their existence. And in Aldo, Catherine-Esther, and Ron's work, they often do the same, examining their selfhood through their relationship with others, themselves, societal constructs, and the world around them. Their poems evoke a sense of searching, finding, and questioning their places in the world from perspectives informed by their identities and experiences. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our 3 wonderful poets. Catherine-Esther Cowie is a poet and visual artist from St. Lucia who has lived in Canada and now resides in the US. She is a graduate of the Pacific University Low Residency MFA program. Her writing has appeared in a number of journals, including The Common, Prairie Schooner, Rhino Poetry, West Branch Journal, and the PN Review. Her work has been nominated for AWP Intro Journal, a Pushcart Prize, Best New Poets 2018 and 2019, and Best of the Net 2021. Aldo Amparán is the author of Brother Sleep, Alice James Books 2022, winner of the 2020 Alice James Award. They have received fellowships from the National Endowment for the Arts and Canto Mundo. Their work has most recently appeared in the Academy of American Poets Poem a Day, Georgia Review, New England Review, Poetry Magazine, and elsewhere. Ron Welburn, Accomack, Cherokee, grew up in Philadelphia, and is an emeritus English professor at UMass Amherst, where he co-started the Native Studies program. His poems have appeared in over 125 literary outlets, and his seventh collection of poetry is Council Decisions, Selected Poems, Revised and Expanded Edition. He is interested in natives and jazz. Now, over to you, Catherine-Esther.
Thank you, Kay. Thank you, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here with all of you this evening. So the first poem I'm going to read is actually, it was published in The Common, and it's called One Night in the Midwest. I smell her. She's in the bed sheets, conjuring aged summers when popsicles stained our mouths red and the sun colored our noses black. We wore her jewels proud, brown bodies glistening in our neon pink and purple suits. She tangled our hair with her touch, kissed hard too often, rolled us around until we landed back flat on the shore. How has she come here? Left her scent? I hear her, the missing roar in a left open window, a call home to dirt roads twisting around sodden hills, a call back to her sargassum-filled belly. But I'm accustomed to this place. The naked trees open to the sky, the neat brick apartment buildings, the thick white fires of winter. How do I tell her what she is now? A closeted self, a party trick I pull out. Sad story of missing the sea. All right, and the next poem is called Accent Mashup. How many times has this girl trampled my greening heads? Like she can reach through the dark of her body and unravel my shape. Look at her, airs at attention like a cat. She shapes her mouth into a pruning knife to upend the deep root of me. But what is sown in the tongue as violence becomes note, becomes song, I grow louder. Fill her mouth with the lizard's tails she macheted as a child, the bougainvillea wrapped around her grandma's porch railings. I knot with the song of oak and fir shushing through these foreign streets, with the sound of the flat-fired valley girls she watches on television. Can she mark me for death? Find me in the cacophony, this breadfruit tree grafted unto oak, this green upon green. Now the next set of poems that I'm going to read is taken from a manuscript that I'm currently working on, which explores the shaping force of violence on 4 generations of women. And primarily it looks at the relationship between mother and daughter. Not all of the poems, but most of the poems. So this poem is called In the Beginning. In the beginning, the man ate, bit right for the sweet bitter of her. And how could he not? He swore she begged, didn't she? Like a mango in a white bowl begs for teeth. And so he ate again and again, wounding her until he pleasured. He begot girls, too many girls, running around with ribbons in their hair, the sound of his end in their playground songs. He escaped to the jungle, hunted what was small, wobbler and finch, weighed their small hearts, the knitting of muscle. His wife sent word, the village boys are circling. The woman sent word, the village boys are circling. He kept hunting, taking down bird after singing bird. The next poem is called The Swan's Daughter. What heralds your birth? The feathered air bloodied, your father exposed. His wife crowns your head with a curse. And your mother swears she sees the sky collapsing into a flood. Or is it a star falling like lightning? But you are the wingless girl with an axe, felling a tree, carving a boat. You will not drown in anyone's visions. What marks your way? The darkening of a bloodline, a coming Messiah exchange for he already done come Messiah encircling your neck. And what blow you strike? Your father's land peopled and seized by those hands who grew the breadfruit trees, dug the fields and made your meals. These hands your father blessed wholly unclean. What your birth does not halt. His light shows, stars spinning, hips emptying of love, the boom and clatter of laughter, praise songs by those same hands. He's handing out feathers. Before he plucks himself clean, you return, put on his power, those glorious wings. Watch, your shadow kingdom rises, spires. Next poem, The Outside Child. I will not disappear, dead myself in a bush somewhere. The freak lives, sucks air. I have a face that is not so unlike hers. Perhaps that's what troubles. I am the final blow, the betrayal so close under her roof in her bed. The man she so loved loved me, raised me in her house. Unnatural thing that I am, a sin, offspring of a predator and a prey that grows and grows, has a mammalian face, hands, feet, a voice like the blackbirds, high-pitched and singing. I have the wildest dreams to hug her children, my cousins, my brothers and sisters. Daughter of a skettel, mother killer they insult. I blossom bright, draw nearer still, allow their biting bites. The sharp of their teeth, the only intimacy they will give. The taste of my flesh, an epiphany. I am, love me. Next poem is called Early Morning Rescue. You search the blue dawn for your mother. She scents of smoke and burnt matches. You steer her back to the house. Soon, your stepfather will wake, demand tea and bread, snatch her by the hair, rattle until you yell, I'll make it. Sometimes you want to push her towards the open gate. Watch as she walks right into the side of a speeding pickup truck. There'd be no more sound, the hitting and the wailing and the insults when you snatch the box of matches from her hand. This poem is called Memoriam, after Carlos Drummond's Residuo. I really like Carlos Drummond. He's from Brazil. Only a little of me remains, a fixture, mad woman locked in a downstairs room, foiled gag, muffler. Of my ravings, the upstairs had nothing, nothing, but still a little of me will stay. The stink of me in the sheets, on the walls, on their tongues, wagging, wagging all night long about my bad romances. Stupid woman, sad woman, object lesson. Of my illness, they talk too much. I'm spectacle, spectre, fire lover, wandering off into the bush, the market square. My early morning peep shows the breaking day. Someone forgot to lock my room again. The music loud in my head, how I shook the neighborhood awake with my naked breast. My grandchildren cried, their friends can't come over. And of those things I remember so little, so little. Why can't they do the same? Of the things I enjoy, they won't remember. The morning doves nesting in the monstrous breadfruit tree, rum thrown back, going deep down between my legs, my hair brushed and slick and smoothed into a bun, my yellow satin ribbon. Of God, am I against, for, or indifferent? Never asked or cared to know. My mother, father, their names, already they've forgotten. Of my love of white, they'll remember cotton dresses bleached in a blinding sun. My men, always, always fair. Of me so little will remain, stripped and pared down to a fear, bright and blossoming in the back of a young girl's head. Ufu, 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 ufu. I forgot to mention, I was supposed to state, ufu means you are crazy in St. Lucian Creole. St. Lucia is the island that I'm from. Right. So I think these poems are kind of serious, so I don't know, I'm gonna recite like a short one. I think it's a little funny, or maybe not funny, but a little lighthearted. So this poem is called Christmas Day. I sing no hymns, I want to get on bad. Christmas Day and the neighbor ponging his music so loud, reggae, calypso, old tune new, I want to get on bad. Christmas Day and I'm out on the porch, sorrel drink in hand, belly full up, I want to hear no carols, no red-hot gospel cell. I want to get on bad. Christmas Day, I already say my prayers. Lord, don't strike me down, because I live up with my man, with common law, and so it will be forever and amen. Christmas Day, no one singing hymns. I winding up my waist so hard. So next poem is called Head Malady. Esther, anoint the back of your thighs with coconut oil. Kiss the insides of your shoulders. Today you are 31 and have not known the inside of a straitjacket, of clozapine, of Alice's Wonderland. Those troubling genes lie listless, mute, eyeless, and dusting. Retire the sentry who stands visual at the thin membrane in your head. You are safe, for now, probably. But what of the shadows that peek at the corner of your eyes? The sound of your name called when no one else is around? Glitches, the brain glitches, like the tremor of blue flashing across your computer screen. It is only your fear that has nodded itself a voice. How often do you hate? Rarely. How often do you obey it? Never. But what of those voices still belling in your ear? It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. The jolt of electricity you feel when you flick the switch on and off is real, real, real. It was all a dirty trick he played. The man you liked and loved and cursed and loved again. Esther, trust the knowing of your flesh, the bulge above the buttonhole. Today, you are 31. And the next poem is called Rogue Memories, aka The Beast. What shrieks cupboards until emptied, falls down the back stairs, scattering into tiny, tiny pieces, has no face, bears no teeth, chases the children here and there with a flick, a lick, licks. Only a small girl stays, puffy with hurt, suckling the air of her teddy bear. Louds the clamor of frozen pots, choruses the accompanying damn yous. Through a window hems a woman in. She's under the bed. She won't come out, she says. Possesses no hands, but conducts the symphony of another's undoing a sound. Slim, slender fingers smash an heirloom, undo a sound, thread a ghost into the small, small air of a girl. Amasses legion at the thin membrane, demanding tending. A witness, tears through anyway, 1,000 little feet running through your head. And the last poem is called Rescue. The freak, dark-headed beast knocks at my cupboard door. I have kept quiet, not a sound. Even when the daddy long legs mounted my nose, she has sniffed me out, calls mommy. What terrifies? The oven, the flour, the butter pulling on the counter. What a test of love. My husband wants homemade bread. It's easy, he said. What a test of love to understand the workings of a clock, a rug, a water filter, the proportion of yeast to flour, the measure of a dash, a dab, a dabble of salt, a misfixer, upper maker of things I am not. The bread is hard, hard like a rock. It will break the teeth of our guests coming for dinner. Oh, what terrifies, he'll turn into mama. How you can't cook up to now. My daughter knocks again. She is 4, a voice so sharp, a seam ripper. I lead her to the sea roiling at the back of our house, our arms full of bread rolls, stones. What is a daughter? Small rescue tearing towards the shoreline, rolls falling like a trail of droppings. She flings the bread into the waves. I will tie my waist with a string to hers. My little boy. Thank you, everybody.
Marvelous.
All right, next we'll have Aldo.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much, Kay and Anna, for inviting me and providing this space to share my work. So it's an honor to be here. So I'll be reading a few poems from my debut collection, Brothers Sleep, and a few newer poems. The newer poems were I had the honor to some of them to be featured in the Common. So I'll start with this poem called Litany with Burning Fields. Let's say death only exists in this line. Let sleep be an only child with a single mother, the dark and elegant moon dropping poppies into my yawn. In the dream, I burn 600 acres and sprint across the flames unclothed. I turn out gilded. I wake up to my brother springing on my bed before dawn, my grandfather heating water in the wailing kettle. Again, say death exists only in this line. A brother grows tumors in his throat. A grandfather dissolves into the soil of a churchyard. I admit I'm in love with sleep. Each morning I wake up and I cave, and a shovel caves the peak of my stomach. I wake up and dust varnishes my brother's side of the bed. I wake up and a field is burning outside my window. This next poem is called Obituaries for the Unnamed. I forget my own grief writing obituaries for the unnamed. A mass grave in Ciudad Juarez takes 50 bodies this morning, the gluttonous desert opening daily its appetite. In a dream, I wander into a cave stacked with corpses. I produce imprints of their faces in my mind. I want to save them from this brutal coil of forgetting. How many of their names their loved ones cried? How long ago? I dig into the cave, my brain swollen with faces, and their blood pulls up my ankles. Listen, the ones whose tongues have not been severed want to tell us their stories. Late one night, a woman climbs a bus back home from the maquila and ends toothless and muscled in a ditch. She smothered a boy without a father, celebrated her 20th birthday in her mother's house with cake and cold coronas. A father leaves his son and wife to cross the desert in the hollowed bottom of a truck. His gut hisses in the sun-stunned metal, fighting other bodies for a breath. Whatever air he wins is stale with piss. The truck halts and quiet. He waits and waits, and the dream ends. I shower, rinse the salt of my back. I drink black coffee, eat cereal, listen to the news. Again, a mass grave opens in Ciudad Juarez, and out there, another body flecks the desert's mouth. Next one is called Some Notes on Love, and this borrows the title from a poem by Dianelli Antigua. You are not a shadow. You're not hiding any more than the moon in a sleepless city. It's midnight. You're not breaking or broken, bend between light and shade. You are not a shadow bending. You're not hiding in your room at the family reunion because your hair is the color of the sky and they must not love what the sky looks like. You're not a bruised eye, a split lip bleeding, a cracked sidewalk in a city where a million eyes inhabit the dark. You are not a shadow. You are not a shadow. You're not the dark bobbing of a body from a tree in the summer breeze or a dancer punctured by a bullet. No, you're not a shadow at the edge of a bullet. In the brightest midnight of the year, you are bright smiled, but should be kissed. You are sweat and muscle. You are skin and breath. You are blood, which travels the body with its pulse. You are kissed. This next poem is called Misadventure. To be born into the Rio Bravo's current when the moon is high and pink. To be so small and round, mother mistakes me for a stone. To grow up without a father. To blame the fact of my faggotry on being fatherless. To thank God, that infinite equation, for being fatherless. To know death has two gold teeth in the front of his mouth. To see him, the night my brother in his glittering fever, pointing at the corner to that grin. To love a man who is a father, to share his mouth with his wife for an instant, to lose a friend, the curving temple of his body to my touch, to break my small metacarpal in a handshake. I've lost 4 years in my hiding, 2 houses to the smell of gunpowder, a loved country for safety. I know death is as fat, tall, and white as the edge of this page. So this last poem from my book is called This Room Will Still Exist. In the beginning, a field broke grass from damp earth and fertilizer, but crops would not grow. The city crept closer. Before you and I were born, our hearts were ripe fruit dangling from a lonely woman's backyard. 94 years ago, a stranger slept with the window open. Fog searched into his room. Imagine waking from a dream of sky to sky. Tonight, your face vanished from my mind's unending mirror. A blue sadness replaced it. A sound, not your voice, not your laughter, but the echo of a shotgun. I strike my dresser's mirror, break off a shard the size of my head. There are 86 sadnesses in this room alone. I've counted each of them. The serpent standing upright to the height of the ceiling. The warm bear skulking in the corner, its fur matted in dust. I've grown a blue mantis the size of my hands. I fed it copper and hyacinth. And often the black caracara locked in the closet ululates at night. I carry the nightstand, carry the bed and the desk, the lamp and the moth circling the lamp to a new room in a new country. I'll wear a different tongue, wear the moon. I'll build a bookshelf from the bark of the dead tree. I'll kiss a man, I'll kiss a man, I'll kiss and ask the moon, when did my brother become myth? His face a brown blotch in my dreams, his skin particles floating in sunlight. Some dull hour in the future, this alcove will be emptied of sound. On a still table in a changing city, my humbled body will open for the last time at the hands of a stranger. I'll love them for this final act of surrender, for the kind stitch and staple. And later, these walls will hold in them the hum of two lovers, which is to say two men or two women, burrowing into each other's breath. So the next poems are our newer work. I'll begin with this one called The Floating Poem. And it's written after Adrienne Rich, borrowing the title from her 21 love poems. Whatever happened with us in the long spent years of our fleshing, you left behind a particle of you, some quiet poem of sweat or spit, the grain of your sorrow perhaps, suspended in the space of your living. It follows across the hall, into the bed, in the whiff of the morning's brew, and holds for a second your body inside mine, your leanness, the throat I kissed, my fingers traversing the fuzz on your back, wet kiss, inelegant mouth, which took in your hot breath like a river. I come and come to this moment, the lingering taste of your salt. And these two last poems were published in the Common. So this poem is called Parable of the Haunted Cloak. Nights alone I thread. I drag the cloak through the mud of the old municipal gardens. Ancient heirloom, my family's ghosts exhale between its woven thread of silk and cotton. Some old cousin, too distant to have known me in his life, speaks broken Spanish from my left shoulder, has forgotten his face. In a candlelit mirror, he finds he's become a nahual, his dry jaw-bearing teeth in want of water. My breast opens, but my water is too soft. He licks the wound until he makes of it a shadow. By dawn, my body full of shadows sheds the mud-heavy cloak. My bestial cousin and I let the light kiss these fragments of dark on my skin. And this last poem is called Questions for the Night I Said I Love You. Is he a saguaro burning in the desert's shadow, or a sidewinder's tracks on sand? Have I left footprints in the snow of his dreaming? Has he dressed his dead in marigold and fed them sweet bread? Are his hands two blades of light slicing open your dimming? O moon, O cloud, O wind rattle, O luminous night, how long can you linger? Cross the desert and the sea, past a month, a decade, my palms brief and dusty lifeline. Thank you so much, everyone.
Okay, thank you, poets. I'm going to read some poems, short ones, I hope. This is from a manuscript called Yellow Wolf Spirit, which I've been hawking for a while. And this poem is called Canoe Circle. It was actually composed back in August of 1992, when my son was a rather little boy. He's a moose now. The great blue heron encircles us, delayed of its fishing, his flights curling around the pottery of the creek. 4 times his great winged form shapes our canoe, easing along the reeds toward the bend and the bridge, turning, easing back downstream. The boy in the middle gains the strength of paddling and seeing, listening all around himself. His eyes and heart find visitors in the turtle heads and loosestrife and the basking turtle. His godfather teaches with stories and soft strokes, and at the canoe prow, his father learns the deft placement of wood in the water. The motion of fathers and sons as they follow the great heron, curling back to origins. I have several poems about, I would say, that time of moonlight when it's sort of half moon and half, even if the full moon, sort of a gibbous phase type of but anyway, this is called A Vision of Doorways. Even outside our doorway, the trailer of a web haunts the dreams where sadness has sought refuge. And since our kin too are ensnared once in a while, such honesty makes us deliver up our fear, held hostage and dragged away from the grandmothers through the forest at night. Sadness is child to the web, and in that child is the old woman's voice, weaving, needing a story, to be retreaded around an identity. Such is the doorway's uncertainty. We can name the gossamer cells link by link, and we can name the forest of our fears, but not the tree that is just a tree, or the doorway we stand in to show her. Also from Yellow Spirit. I've been, every once in a while I get attracted by the possibility of a prose poem. And this is one called A Taste of Smoke. Before he entered, cigarette smell greeted him. She was sitting beside the open window in cut-off jeans, slippers, and a windbreaker, white stick burning in a shell. Since she gave in to the desire for a smoke, he recalls its taste in a woman's mouth and advances, thinking of Benson and Hedges and the rum and coke ballads, and then the heavy eyelids and aromas of early morning. My wife, Sherry, has teased me sometimes about what men, how they confuse the color violet or purple with brown. So I wrote a poem called A Deep Violet. Her walking creates the sensation of deep violet, just for a few moments, where she claims all men are confused by dark brown. Whisk and a sniff sniff she walks, runner's calves determining stride, and the light around her ankles teases the sense of dinner and the late show's perfume. A woman in classic pumps is more than elliptical, is vaunted ever and over again despite shadows and amber light, is the flavor of passion and elegance I can barely address to her dark brown shoes. Or is it Violet's deep and sultry mood? Let's see. We are not shapes in the moonlight, but stories. We are not shapes in the moonlight, but stories. Our children are anecdotal substance with a new imagination ancestry feeds us in the warm soup of memory. A meal is the handed down legacy, the samp with its berries, the corn soup and the squash blossoms. In the night when we meander with relations, we are those elders who resist all peripheries. Samp is a meal popular among native peoples in the East Coast, especially in the Northeast. It's made of cracked corn. And let's see here. Here's another one, First Library. It's also a prose poem. A gathering of stories, old lessons, and new adventures was the first library, cataloged according to teaching and cross-filed according to season and to family. All the people listen well in their homes, at the lakeside fire, along the trail. How you and I receive them is, too, a lesson left strictly to chance. As wisdom abides, hooded twilight descends as a space on the westward view opens. I'll start over. Hooded twilight descends as a space on the westward view opens between the houses and trees. The space is pink-washed lavender, pulling yellow from the vestigial afternoon. Across the closing light stretch lines of covenant chain, confirming 2 good days in Oneida country, and 2 others with that trickster of liberty. These bands of darkness span eyes and windows to strengthen hearts, and the power is its loveliness in the twilight and the meaning we would give signs buoyed by the soft textures absent of cloud. Even wisdom abides in us, unless the wolf of night travels, crossing the turnpike is something else in the golden spectrum of its gray coat. Traveling sustains this knowing, whose teachers are speedy and learned inside, gifting our impulse of vision, and then to vanish, leaving shadows on us to meditate and worship and grow. I'll close with a couple of poems from Council Decisions, a collection which really went through a lot of stuff to get here. Because it was originally published in 1990 or something, yeah. And many of the copies were lost and finally found again. But I decided to reignite it and add a few poems. It's called Council Decisions. Poems by Ron Welburn, revised and expanded edition. This one is called An Eagle Alights on the Bandstand. An eagle alights on the bandstand and disappears through the tubing of cornets. A series of owls from the forest to the stockades on my bass clarinet. Elk voice assures my trombone, and every crow and jay, every pheasant, cock, and raven play my saxophones. With this, I offered you an intertribal. I'm old enough to remember a song that was, I think it was called by, sung by Mark Johnson, or one of those folks. It's called A Lover's Question. Nights the man recalled the teenager singing a lover's question addressed to the stars, singing of no one in particular, the way Art Blakey introduced a love song from his drum kit to launch into Blue Moon or A Torch, Sincerely Diana. Even a Hank Williams song felt right, or Jimmy Clanton's Just a Dream. She was of copper skin with the longest braid that could have grown in the longest mountain, but that could have grown on the longest mountain that was protected on the longest walk that ended up someplace she'd never tell him to go, there in West Philadelphia, to flavor his longest dream. Let's see. The warrior. To defend its grace, the soul pushes back the machine. To defend its soul, grace makes humble its offer of weapons. There lurks no contradiction in this alliance. Each is a protector of the present, and all bets are off. That's the group of poems, and I thank you again for the opportunity and the honor to read in this program. I guess it's up to Kaylin or...
Yes. Thank you all for those wonderful readings. We're gonna move into the Q&A portion we're gonna move into the Q&A portion of the panel now, of the reading. So if you have any questions you'd like to ask, please put them in the Q&A portion of the Zoom, and we'll try and get to as many as we can. I'm going to start off with a question of my own, actually. So when talking about Dickinson's work with others, something that often comes up is placelessness, or a word that often comes up is placelessness. And on the other hand, the Common publishes writing with a strong sense of place. So as poets that come from migrant and immigrant communities and communities that have been displaced both literally and figuratively, how does place or placelessness come into play in your poetry?
I guess I can start. I think place is super important. I think growing up in the Caribbean and then migrating, the place is like another self, and it just permeates all the creative work I do. I call it the groundation, almost like there's something inside me that's been hard-coded. I think sometimes I would say like it's almost a surrealist experience. You know, I remember sitting in a group and like a flash in my head, this, you know, I felt like a breadfruit tree was growing inside me. I would wake up and there's the scent of the sea. So it's very surreal. So I mean that permeates. It's just it's a part of who I am. The place is a part of who I am. And I'm thinking of landscape when I say that. The sea, the sun, the scents, the smells, everything.
Okay, I can go next. For me, growing up in the border was very, very important to writing this book and poetry beyond this first book. I found it like pretty surreal as well that there was this connotation that there's a place that is very dangerous, which would be Juarez, especially when growing up in Juarez. That was where the drug war and the cartels and everything was at its peak. Like the violence in Juarez was at its peak when I was growing up and in high school, which is the time period where my first book is set. And then we have across the border this city that was called the second safest city in the United States. So that dichotomy separated by a river was very, very important to me to portray in the book, especially because speaking about displacement, my family and I had to move from Juarez to the other side of the border because of the safety issues, because of this ongoing violence that didn't really let us breathe safely when we lived over there back then. I do want to mention about these connotations that people still have these connotations of violence and aggression from in Juarez. But I do want to say that Juarez is not as violent as back then, when I was writing this or when I was setting this poetry book. But yeah, that whole time period was so important to me to portray in terms of place and the border here.
Okay. Well, I think my experience is one of both rural Pennsylvania and urban Pennsylvania. I was born in Bryn Mawr Hospital. My hometown is Berwyn. It's out on the main line. Started school there, and then I grew up in Philadelphia. And I've always had a kind of a sense of, there's a tension between me in a large city where I've lived, and I lived in Brooklyn for a while, and also in the outskirts, so to speak. My poems are kind of rooted in a sense of the place of my origins in the Chesapeake watershed, the lower Delaware Valley, and the southeastern Pennsylvania, urban and otherwise. But I live in New England, so-called, and I like to capture that feeling of uncertainty, I guess you could say, about how we come to reconcile some of these feelings of, distance from perhaps a place of origin. My mother's side of the family comes from the Delmarva Peninsula, essentially. And from the reservation, her mother was a descendant of the reservation on the eastern shore of Virginia. So there's that sense of knowing what that's all about, going to that place and so forth. Just probably more, but that's all for now on that topic.
Yes, kind of a follow-up question that someone put in the Q&A section. Given the groundation of place, do any of you feel as an exile from that foundational place? If anyone wants to start.
That's exactly. I think what it feels like is almost like just being an immigrant. It's almost like the body's here, but the mind is elsewhere, and it's not nostalgia. It's almost like it is almost like a haunting. Like this other place is pervading through. I don't know, like invading this reality, right? So it feels. I think there's a poet that I love. I'm trying to remember her name, but she speaks about it's called Schizophrenia, is the name of a book. Almost like the immigrant experience is almost like a schizophrenic experience because it is a bit of an unmooring. So I think I can say like for a period of time in my life, it felt like an unmooring because the body's here, but the mind is elsewhere, and the mind is trying to map out this new place. I'll find the poet and I'll put it in the chat. Let me do that right now.
I think because of the nature of this border, I never really felt as an exile from the city where I grew up, because I never really lost connection to that city. I still have a lot of friends over there, family members over there. So yeah, I never really felt an exile, especially, and coming here, the community is so richly embedded in the community of the border that it also felt really inviting.
Yeah, sometimes in some of the poems, I may write about the Eastern Shore, the Chesapeake watershed, and the lower Delaware Valley, which is where I was born and raised. But yeah, there is a sense of feeling kind of disconnected from some of that because of the fact that I've lived where I grew up. My whole sense of growing up was in that one place in the Philadelphia area. So it's yeah, that's important. I think that we can make, as poets, we can try to make as much sense out of that as we possibly can. It has to be that way, I guess. And it's well, it's how can I say? You know, you have a sense of the loss of a place, and you have a sense of that loss having gone through the colonial sieve experience, colonization, and so forth. From the youngest time, I was always aware of that. And, it was not easy sometimes because a lot of family members didn't want to talk about it. So I had to make my own way in many ways. So, okay.
Yeah, so I'm teaching a creative writing workshop right now to high school students, and one of the things that I've been discussing with them is how writers are sometimes expected to tokenize their underrepresented social economic identities, or display their traumas. So is there anything that you guys refuse to write about because people expect you to based on those identities? I'm thinking too to Tommy Pico's nature poem here, if you guys are familiar with it. Or how does identity shape what you desire to write about, on another end of that? And feel free to let that take you to any musing on identity in your writing that you will.
I'm going to step in on that first, I guess. And identity is kind of. I have a poem called "Identity Stand," and it's where I say that identity stand. You have to stand with your identity where you are and as a part of where you are. If, as a person of, let's say, of Cherokee and Southern Algonquin heritage, and maybe a few more, I know that that's the heritage that I have. It's given to me. So, and the African American part of it too. So, it's just it can be difficult sometimes, but I think it's actually more. It's been fairly easy for me. I can only speak for myself in that regard.
I think for me, the expectations of people really don't play a part in what I want to write. I think in these first couple of books, the manuscript I'm working on and my first book, it was important for me to cover themes that or subjects that made me feel vulnerable, because a big part of writing for me was allowing myself to be vulnerable. So if identity plays a huge part in that vulnerability, which it did for me, especially in the time period where this book is based, when I was coming out, when I had all these questions and these connotations of violence against queer bodies that really dictated that can I come out? Is it safe to come out? That was important for me to write. And certainly I've heard a lot of criticism that they're writing this to appeal to the zeitgeist, the minority expectations of writing about identity this way. But I never see it that way. It's always something that I feel I need to write about, and the need to be vulnerable, of course.
I think like with the first manuscript, it was not approaching it from, oh, I'm this, I'm that. I was most interested in understanding how did Esther arrive here, and how did Esther arrive here? Okay, I say Esther. My full name is Catherine-Esther, but I do go by Esther. So how did I arrive here? And looking at my matrilineage, right? What was the shaping? How were they shaped? How was history and decisions women were making and men were making that I've arrived here? So it was seeing it through that perspective versus oh, I'm an immigrant, or I'm a Black woman. And it's kind of interesting because immigrating here, that's when I realized, oh, and when I say, oh, when I realized I'm Black, I knew I was Black, but it wasn't a primary identifier in the Caribbean because most of everybody's Black. So that's interesting. And even moving forward, I don't know, I just especially for this particular manuscript, it was just really more of like understanding what shaped the familial dynamics that shaped my psyche, my family psyche, the matrilineage.
Yes, thank you all for those responses. Definitely chewing on a lot of the things that you all said. I know I asked a couple heavy questions, so something lighter. Could you all say a little bit about your creative process? Is there anything in particular that helps you write? Or is another question that is related to that, that someone put in the Q&A, is who is the first person that you show a poem to, and in the process of completing it, and how does that person help you?
Well, golly, I think the creative process, that's a heavy question. But I think it's, I like to think of writing as a sort of a dreamtime experience. You have to have some kind of a sense of vision, being closed, even if you're out in public, so that you can see and feel and hear things and put them together. And I remember that, well, Melvin Tolson, who was one of the early 20th century Lincoln University poets, Lincoln University being one of the first of the HBCUs, he came to campus a year before he passed, and he said, "Some people don't see anything." And I remember that. And you have to see things. I'm always swirling things, I guess, as a sense of irony. Sometimes my sense of the ironical goes over people's heads, but hey, I mean, that's maybe that's the poet in me. I don't know. That's a heavy question. I could write we could talk about that all the rest of the evening.
Yes, for me, it would be writing at specific hours in the day, like especially late at night or very early in the morning, really inspire me. And I also really like having being able to reach out for the voices that are really influencing me around that time where I'm writing a specific poem or a specific manuscript. So having the books that from poets that really inspire me, or from fiction writers or prose writers, to having them at my reach really helps. Even looking at the covers or the titles really helps my creative process. And when it comes to the first person that I show my poems to or my writing to, I don't have a specific person. There are a group of friends. Whoever I see first gets that chance, and I always listen to their opinions. It's always great to listen to what you can take out of that poem, or what it needs to develop.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna like echo Aldo. It's like, yes, having, you know, writers that inspire me, their work. And I don't know, sometimes it's just like being in a certain place, a feeling, and also in terms of like sharing my work. And yes, definitely with writer friends. I'm going to call one out who's here, Anna, when I was doing my MFA. It was great having her look at my work. And other friends, just as you know, you go through your writerly journey. And again, people you trust, people who are going to be honest with you, and who get what you're trying to do with your work. I think that's important, because not everyone's going to get it.
Yes, thank you all for answering that. We're out of time for questions, but thank you, Catherine-Esther and Aldo and Ron, for those lovely readings and the wonderful discussion. If anyone in the audience would like to browse more of the writing published in the Common or subscribe, you can follow a link that will be dropped in the chat. Yeah, I'll hand it back over to Anna.
Great. Yep, just sharing that link for you all in the chat. Thank you so much, Kay, and thank you, poets, for sharing your work and conversation with all of us. Really, really just beautiful and fascinating. Yeah, I'm going to be chewing on a lot of these words and thoughts today as well. And thanks also to all of you listening from home. Really great to have you participating and watching this evening. Next month, we will conclude our 2023 Phosphorescence series with featured poets Allison Adair, Kristen Hill, and Demisty Bellinger, so you'll want to come again. And this week, the Tell It Slant Poetry Festival continues online and on-site at the museum now through Sunday, October 1st. So check out the full schedule in our festival platform. And the poetry marathon reading of all Dickinson's poems continues each day. And tomorrow night, we will present the annual Tell It Slant Awards alongside some fascinating conversation about Dickinson, past, present, and future. Saturday's screening of the TV show Dickinson and our late night garden party with headliners Marilyn Nelson and Abigail Chibitnoy also are not to miss. So that's just a taste of what's coming. And to register for programs and to learn more about the museum, or to make a donation, you can visit us at emilydickinsonmuseum.org. So we hope you will head over to the website and stay in touch with all the amazing work these poets are doing. Thank you so much for joining us. Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Well done. Manishi.